At 06:15 hours on June 8, 1944, Sergeant Robert Thorne crouched in the shattered remains of a French farmhouse 300 yards east of Sainte-Mère-Église, watching 7 German officers through borrowed binoculars. The officers stood on a second-floor balcony of a stone château, 800 yards across open farmland, spreading maps on an iron table, pointing at American positions, planning something that would kill Americans. Thorne could see their insignia through the binoculars: 3 majors, 4 captains, senior officers, the kind who coordinated counterattacks, who organized defenses, who made tactical decisions that cost lives. The morning air smelled like cordite and wet earth. Distant machine gun fire rattled from the north. Mist was lifting off the fields, burning away in early sunlight. The chateau sat on a low rise, stone walls intact despite 4 days of fighting. German flag hanging from the roof, no damage visible. Americans hadn't gotten close enough to damage it. That was the problem. 800 yards of open farmland separated American positions from that chateau. Wheat field, recently planted, 8 inches of green growth offering 0 concealment. 4 German MG-42 machine gun nests covered every approach. Effective range of those guns, 1,200 yards. Americans would be under fire for 48 seconds crossing that distance. At 6 seconds per 100 yards, running full speed with combat load, 48 seconds of exposure to interlocking fields of fire from weapons that fired 1,200 rounds per minute. The mathematics were simple and fatal. 23 Americans had died in the past 48 hours trying to cross that field. 23 men who followed doctrine, who closed the distance, who tried to engage at 200 yards where M1 Garands were effective. None made it past 400 yards. The German machine gunners were professionals. They waited until assault teams committed, let them reach the middle of the field where retreat and advance were equally deadly, then opened fire. Casualty rate, 87% for troops attempting the crossing. Battalion had lost 1 full platoon, parts of 2 others, 37 wounded, bleeding in aid stations, some dying from wounds. 23 dead, bodies still in that field because recovery meant more casualties. Nobody was crossing that ground in daylight. Not anymore. Not after what happened to Morrison's squad. Lieutenant Morrison had led the first attempt. June 6th, 1400 hours, 12 men, standard rifle squad. They made it 150 yards before the German guns opened up. Morrison went down first, 3 rounds through the chest. His assistant squad leader took over, kept moving forward. Made it another 30 yards. Then the second MG-42 opened fire from a different angle. Interlocking fire. 9 casualties in 40 seconds. 3 dead. 6 wounded. The survivors crawled back through the wheat, dragging wounded, leaving Morrison and 2 others in the field. Second attempt came June 7th at 0600 hours. Platoon strength assault, 38 men. They used smoke for concealment. Mortars dropped white phosphorus 200 yards out, created a screen. The assault team moved forward during the smoke. But wind was wrong. Smoke dissipated faster than expected, cleared after 3 minutes. Germans had been waiting. They knew Americans would use smoke. They held fire until the smoke cleared and Americans were committed at 300 yards. Then 4 MG-42s opened up simultaneously. 17 casualties, 7 dead. The platoon broke, survivors retreated to American lines, carried their wounded, left their dead. Third attempt, June 7th, 1400 hours. Battalion mortars prepared the target. 20 minutes of sustained fire on the chateau. 60-millimeter rounds, high explosive. Blasted the stone walls, shattered windows, destroyed the balcony railing. When the mortars lifted, an assault team of 16 men moved forward. They made it 400 yards, farthest anyone had gotten. Then German soldiers emerged from the chateau cellar, where they'd sheltered during the bombardment. The machine guns had survived. Germans had reinforced the gun positions with sandbags and timber. Mortars hadn't touched them. The guns opened fire. 11 casualties, 4 dead. Total butcher's bill, 23 dead, 37 wounded. 1/4 of the battalion's effective infantry strength. And Americans hadn't gotten closer than 400 yards to that chateau. Battalion commander, Colonel Hastings, declared the position unassailable without armor support. But no armor was available. Tanks were still fighting through bocage country 15 miles south. Hedgerows too thick, roads too narrow. Tanks couldn't reach this sector for another week, maybe longer. Division wanted that chateau taken. It blocked the route to Cherbourg. German observers on that balcony could see American positions for miles. Every American movement, every supply truck, every troop assembly, visible to German eyes. The intelligence flowed from that chateau to German artillery, to German counterattack forces, to German defensive positions. As long as Germans held that chateau, American advance stalled in this sector. But division wouldn't commit more infantry without a better plan. And nobody had a better plan, just the same plan. Cross the field, assault the position, accept the casualties. Standard infantry doctrine. The kind of doctrine that filled cemeteries. So the situation had become a stalemate. Americans couldn't advance. Germans couldn't push Americans back. Both sides waiting. Americans waiting for tanks. Germans waiting for reinforcements. Men dying while staffs planned and logistics crawled forward. Thorne had been watching that chateau for 2 days. Studying it. Watching the patterns. He'd grown up in Sedan, Kansas. Population 843. His father raised wheat on 1,500 acres of prairie, flat country. You could see 20 miles on a clear day. 3 grain silos on the Thorne family property, each 60 feet tall, built in 1927 when wheat prices were high. Cylindrical structures, stone construction, ladder access on the interior. His father used them for grain storage during harvest. Thorne had used them for something else. Starting age 12, Thorne hunted groundhogs from those silo catwalks. The groundhogs dug burrows in the wheat fields, created hazards for machinery. His father paid him 2 cents per groundhog. Thorne would climb to the silo summit at dawn, sit on the catwalk with his father's Winchester Model 70 rifle, and wait for groundhogs to emerge. First shots were at 300 yards. By age 15, he was making consistent kills at 600 yards. By 17, he'd killed a groundhog at 940 yards. Calm morning, no wind, target standing still on a fence post. First round hit. Height changed everything. From ground level, a groundhog at 600 yards disappeared into terrain variation. Grass, fence posts, dirt mounds, all created obstructions. But from 60 feet elevation, the sight line cleared all that. Just open air between rifle and target. Wind was more predictable at height. No ground turbulence, no eddies around obstacles, just clean wind flowing across open prairie. Thorne learned to read wind by watching grass movement. Learned to calculate bullet drop by measuring distance with his father's surveying equipment. Learned patience by sitting motionless for hours, waiting for the perfect shot. By age 18, he could consistently hit targets at 800 yards. Not always first round, but within 3 rounds. He'd joined the Army in June 1942, turned 24 that month. Farm had been struggling since 1938. Dust storms, low wheat prices, bank threatening foreclosure. Thorne's enlistment bonus paid 2 months of mortgage. His monthly pay sent home kept the farm alive. He joined the 82nd Airborne because the pay was better. Paratroopers got $50 extra per month. Hazard pay. His family needed that $50. Basic training at Fort Benning. Marksmanship qualification, he scored expert. 48 out of 50 targets at 500 yards with M1 Garand. The range instructors asked how a farm kid learned to shoot like that. Thorne told them about the silos, about the groundhogs, about 940 yards. They didn't believe him. Thought he was exaggerating. Farm boys always exaggerated. Jump school, summer 1943. 5 jumps, qualified as paratrooper. Assigned to 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 2nd Battalion. Deployed to England, March 1944. 3 months of training for the invasion. Learning French terrain from maps. Practicing night jumps, preparing for something nobody would describe clearly, but everyone knew was coming. D-Day jump happened at 0130 hours, June 6th. Thorne's aircraft took anti-aircraft fire over the Cotentin Peninsula. Pilot took evasive action, dropped the stick 2 miles off course. Thorne landed in a flooded field, waist-deep water, nearly drowned, tangled in his parachute. Cut himself free, found dry ground, spent 3 days moving through hedgerows trying to reach Sainte-Mère-Église. Joined up with 7 other paratroopers, mixed units, nobody from his original squad. They fought through German positions, small firefights, finally reached American lines June 9th. Now he was here, crouching in rubble, watching German officers plan American deaths. Current assignment: Rifle Squad Sergeant, 2nd Battalion, 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment. 9 men under his command. Good men. 3 had died since D-Day, replaced by green troops who'd arrived on the beaches. Kids, most of them. 18, 19 years old, scared, trying not to show it. Thorne was quiet by nature, didn't waste words. Other soldiers thought he was slow because he took time making decisions. But he wasn't slow. He was calculating. Distance, wind, elevation, probability. Every tactical situation was a math problem. Sometimes the math said, attack. Sometimes it said, withdraw. Sometimes it said, wait. Most soldiers rushed their calculations, trusted instinct. Thorne trusted mathematics. He saw terrain differently than other soldiers, always looking for high ground. Clear sight lines, covered approaches. Where others saw buildings, he saw firing positions. Where others saw obstacles, he saw concealment. Everything was geometry. Angles of fire, dead space, fields of observation. That's why he'd noticed the silo. Northeast corner of the wheat field, 300 yards from American lines. Stone construction, approximately 60 feet tall, based on architectural similarity to Kansas silos. Cylindrical, narrow at the base, widening slightly toward the summit. Probably built in the 1890s when this farm was established. Old, but solid. Shrapnel damage visible on the southwest face, but structure intact. Thorne had been studying that silo through binoculars for 36 hours. Calculating. Distance from silo to château. 760 yards, measured using map and protractor. More direct angle than shooting from American lines. From American positions, the angle to château balcony was shallow, almost horizontal. But from the silo, the angle would be approximately 15 degrees elevation. That changed everything. Eliminated ground-level obstructions, hedgerows, fences, terrain variation, all irrelevant from that height. Clear line of sight from silo summit to château balcony. Thorne had noticed the German officers' pattern. Every morning at 0700 hours, they appeared on that balcony for 20 to 30 minutes. Conference, maps spread on the table, pointing at American positions, discussing something. After the conference, German patrols probed American lines. Every evening at 1600 hours, same pattern. Evening briefing. More maps, more pointing. Then German artillery fire increased. The correlation was obvious. Those morning and evening conferences coordinated German operations. Kill the officers coordinating those operations, German effectiveness degraded. But nobody could shoot them. Range was too great. M1 Garand effective range, 400 yards maximum for consistent accuracy. Château balcony was 820 yards from American lines. Nobody in the battalion had equipment for that shot, nobody except Thorne. He'd brought something to Normandy that wasn't Army issue. His personal Winchester Model 70, 30-06 caliber. The rifle his father bought new in 1937 for $112. Entire month of farm income. Thorne and his father had modified it over the years. Glass-bedded the stock winter of 1939. Hand-lapped the barrel, Thorne doing the work himself. 3 days of careful polishing. Free-floated the barrel so it touched nothing but the receiver. Mounted a Weaver Model 330 scope, 4 power magnification, crosshair reticle. Zeroed it at 300 yards with dope calculated out to 1,000 yards. That Winchester had killed the groundhog at 940 yards. It could kill a German officer at 760. Thorne had smuggled the rifle aboard ship in a waterproof duffel, declared it as personal effects. Nobody checked. Too much chaos during embarkation. He'd kept it hidden in his equipment bundle during the jump. Found the bundle on June 7th in a hedgerow near his drop zone. The rifle had survived. He'd fired it twice since landing, confirming 0 at 400 yards. Both shots hit center. The rifle was ready. The question wasn't whether he could make the shot. The question was whether he could reach that silo, set up a hide, and operate long enough to matter. That meant crossing 200 yards of open ground, climbing 60 feet while exposed, operating alone for days without support. Battalion would call it suicide, would tell him to wait for artillery, wait for tanks, wait for a better solution. Thorne had watched 23 men die waiting for better solutions. He was done waiting. The Winchester lay wrapped in canvas at the bottom of Thorne's pack, hidden under K rations and ammunition bandoliers. Nobody in his squad knew he had it. Nobody had asked why his pack weighed 53 pounds when standard combat load was 38. Paratroopers learned not to ask questions about what other men carried. Everyone had something unauthorized. Extra ammunition, stolen rations, French wine, German souvenirs. Thorne's souvenir just happened to be a precision rifle. Winchester Model 70, manufactured 1937 by Winchester. Repeating Arms Company, New Haven, Connecticut. Serial number 472893. Chambered in 30-06 Springfield cartridge. Standard load, 150 grain bullet, 2,700 feet per second muzzle velocity at the muzzle. 5-round internal magazine, controlled round feed action, most reliable design Winchester ever produced. The bolt rotated 90 degrees, locked into the receiver with 3 lugs. Even covered in mud or sand, it functioned. His father had saved for 18 months to buy that rifle. 1936 had been a decent year. Wheat prices climbed to $1.08 per bushel. The farm cleared $800 after expenses. His father took $112 to Schmidt's gun shop in Wichita, bought the Winchester, brought it home like he'd won the lottery. Thorne was 15. His father let him hold it that first night. The walnut stock was smooth, uncheckered, straight from the factory. The blued steel barrel was 24 inches long, heavy profile for accuracy. The trigger broke clean at 3.5 pounds. They'd modified it together over the next 4 years. Winter of 1939, they glass-bedded the stock, mixed epoxy resin, poured it into the stock's barrel channel, pressed the barreled action into the wet epoxy. Let it cure for 72 hours. When they removed the action and cleaned out the epoxy, the fit was perfect. No movement, no stress points, just metal bedded solidly in wood. Accuracy improved immediately. Groups at 300 yards shrank from 4 inches to 2 inches. Summer of 1940, Thorne hand-lapped the barrel. Bought lapping compound from Schmidt's, mixed it with oil, wrapped patches around a brass rod. Pushed the rod through the bore 500 times, working the compound into the rifling. Removed microscopic imperfections, smoothed the lands and grooves. Took 3 days. His shoulders ached for a week afterward. But groups at 600 yards shrank from 9 inches to 5 inches. Fall of 1940, they free-floated the barrel. Cut away wood from the barrel channel so nothing touched the barrel except the receiver. No pressure points, no contact with the stock. The barrel vibrated freely when fired, harmonics undisturbed. Groups at 800 yards shrank from 18 inches to 11 inches. Spring of 1941, they mounted the scope. Weaver Model 330, 4-power magnification. Cost $38, nearly as much as a month's groceries. But the scope changed everything. Iron sights at 800 yards meant guessing where the target was behind the front post. The scope showed the target clearly, showed wind drift in the grass, showed mirage rising from hot ground, showed everything. Thorne had zeroed the rifle at 300 yards that spring, fired 60 rounds over 2 days, adjusting the scope until bullets hit exactly where the crosshairs aimed. Then, he'd calculated elevation holds for every 100 yards out to 1,000. Written the numbers in a small notebook. At 400 yards, hold 6 inches high. At 500 yards, hold 14 inches high. At 600 yards, hold 26 inches high. At 700 yards, hold 43 inches high. At 800 yards, hold 65 inches high. The calculations assumed 150 grain federal ammunition, sea level elevation, 60 degrees Fahrenheit, no wind. Actual conditions varied, so Thorne had learned to adjust. Hot weather meant bullets flew faster, dropped less. Cold weather meant slower, dropped more. Altitude changed air density. Wind pushed bullets horizontally. The groundhog at 940 yards had taken all of that into account. Summer morning, 78 degrees, light wind from the west at 4 miles per hour. Thorne had held 89 inches high and 12 inches left. First round hit. The groundhog had been standing on a fence post. Thorne watched through the scope as the bullet struck, watched the groundhog tumble backward. His father had paced the distance afterward. 940 yards exactly. That rifle had come to war in a waterproof duffel bag. Thorne wrapped it in oilcloth, sealed the bag with tape, wrote personal effects, Sergeant R. Thorne, on the outside. The bag went into the cargo hold with 3,000 other duffels. Nobody inspected it. Nobody asked what was inside. On D-Day, the bag dropped with the equipment bundles, separate from the paratroopers. Thorne found it 2 days later in a hedgerow, intact. He'd test-fired it on June 7th. 2 shots at a German helmet 400 yards away, left on a fence post by a retreating soldier. Both shots hit center. The rifle had survived the ocean crossing, the parachute drop, 2 days of combat. Everything still functioned. Now the rifle lay in his pack, waiting. Thorne had 60 rounds of ammunition, not military issue. Federal 150 grain soft-point hunting ammunition, bought from Schmidt's gun shop before deployment. Military ball ammunition was inconsistent. Powder charges varied, bullet weights varied, accuracy suffered. Hunting ammunition was loaded to tighter specifications. Every cartridge nearly identical. Every bullet the same weight, same shape, same ballistic coefficient. At 800 yards, the difference between military and hunting ammunition was 20 inches of vertical dispersion. 20 inches meant the difference between hitting and missing. At 1800 hours on June 8th, Thorne found Lieutenant Davis in the ruined farmhouse that served as platoon command post. Davis was 23 years old. Ohio State ROTC, Commission 1943. Good officer, listened to his sergeants, didn't try to prove himself by getting men killed. Davis was studying a map when Thorne entered. "What do you need, Sergeant?" "Permission to try something, sir." Davis looked up. "Try what?" "The château. I think I can neutralize their officers." Davis set down the map. "Battalion tried 3 times, lost 23 men. You got a better idea than a full platoon assault?" "Yes, sir. Sniper operation, single shooter, elevated position." "Elevated position where?" "We're in flatland. Highest point is that pile of rubble you're standing in." "The silo, sir. Northeast corner of the field, 60 feet elevation, clear line of sight to the chateau balcony." Davis stared at him. "That silo's 200 yards into no man's land. You'll get killed crossing that distance." "I'll cross at night. Germans can't see in the dark any better than we can." "And then what?" "You'll be trapped in that silo. No support, no resupply, no extraction. You'll starve or get captured." "I'll bring supplies. 3 canteens, 6 K rations. Can make that last 6 days, if necessary." "6 days?" Davis's voice rose. "You're planning to sit in a silo for 6 days?" "However long it takes to kill their officers, sir." "Battalion will never approve this." "Then don't tell Battalion. Tell them I'm on reconnaissance patrol. Tell them I'm gathering intelligence on German positions." Davis walked to the window, looked toward the chateau. "If you get killed out there, I'm the one who answers for it." "If I get killed, tell them I went unauthorized. Tell them I disobeyed orders. Won't matter to me." "Why are you doing this?" Thorne thought about Morrison's squad, about 23 bodies in that wheat field, about kids from Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan, dead because nobody could figure out how to cross 800 yards of open ground. "Because men are dying, and we're not fixing it, sir. We're waiting for tanks that won't arrive for a week, waiting for artillery that can't hit targets inside stone buildings, waiting for better conditions. Men die while we wait." Davis turned from the window. "What do you need?" "Just don't stop me, sir. I've got everything else." "What are you shooting with?" "M1 Garand's useless at that range." "Personal rifle, Winchester Model 70, 30-06, scoped." "You brought a hunting rifle to Normandy?" "Yes, sir." Davis almost smiled. "You're either crazy or genius. Haven't decided which." He paused. "If this works, I'm taking credit for authorizing it. If it fails, you disobeyed orders, and I knew nothing. Understood?" "Understood, sir." "When are you going?" "Oh, 4:30 tomorrow morning. Full darkness. Moon sets at 04:15. "Good luck, Sergeant." Thorne spent the next 8 hours preparing. Cleaned the Winchester completely. Field stripped it, wiped down every part with oiled cloth, removed dust and moisture. Ran patches through the bore until they came out clean. Checked the scope mounting screws, tightened them. Looked through the scope, verified clarity and reticle alignment. Everything perfect. He packed his gear methodically. 3 canteens, filled. 6 K rations, wool blanket, entrenching tool, binoculars. 60 rounds of ammunition, arranged in 2 boxes of 30. Canvas bag for brass casings because he didn't want evidence scattered around the silo. Compass, Map, wristwatch, field knife. Total weight, 43 pounds, including the rifle. He tested movement with the full load. Practiced low crawling across the farmhouse floor. 43 pounds felt manageable. Heavy, but not impossible. Ranged to château from silo. 760 yards, measured using map and protractor. Thorne calculated the shot parameters. Bullet drop at 760 yards, approximately 120 inches. He'd need to hold 10 feet high, but the scope would only adjust 6 feet at that range. So he'd aim at the balcony wall above the target, let the bullet arc down into the officer's chest. Wind was the bigger problem. Prevailing wind from the west, approximately 5 miles per hour based on grass movement. At 760 yards, 5-mile-per-hour crosswind pushed a 150-grain bullet approximately 14 inches. He'd need to aim 14 inches left of center for a hit. But wind changed. Morning air was calmer. Evening air was gustier. He'd need to read conditions for each shot, adjust accordingly. He tried to sleep at 2,200 hours. Couldn't. Mind ran through scenarios. German patrol spotting him during the crossing, ladder breaking during the climb, Germans discovering the silo, assaulting it, running out of water, running out of ammunition, getting wounded with no medic, no evacuation. At 0400 hours, he gave up on sleep. Rose gathered his gear, checked the Winchester one final time. At 0430 hours, he exited the farmhouse through a shell hole in the north wall. The night was moonless, overcast, dark enough that he couldn't see 20 feet ahead. Perfect. He moved northeast along a hedgerow, staying low. Grass was wet with dew, soaked his uniform within 50 yards. The cold water felt good, woke him up, sharpened his focus. He followed the hedgerow for 100 yards, then turned east into open ground. The silo was visible as a darker shadow against the dark sky. Distance, 180 yards of wheat field. Thorne dropped to his belly, began crawling. Low crawl technique from basic training. Pull with elbows, push with toes, keep body flat. 3 feet per minute with 43 pounds of gear. The ground was soft, recently plowed and planted. Wheat stalks brushed his face. The smell was earth and growing things, completely wrong for a battlefield. Should smell like death and smoke. Instead, it smelled like Kansas in spring. He crawled 50 yards, stopped, listened. Artillery rumbled 15 miles south. Small arms fire crackled to the east. No sounds nearby, no German patrols. He continued crawling. At 100 yards, he heard voices, German voices, 2 men, talking quietly. Northwest direction, maybe 300 yards. Probably a listening post. Thorne froze, waited. The voices continued for 2 minutes, then faded. Patrol moving south. He resumed crawling. His elbows ached. His toes cramped in his boots. 43 pounds felt like 80. But he kept moving. At 0650 hours, he reached the silo base. Took 2 hours and 20 minutes to crawl 180 yards. The sky was lightening to the east. Dawn in 15 minutes. He had to get inside and up that ladder before full daylight. The silo door was wooden, weathered gray, hanging on iron hinges that had rusted through decades of Norman winters. Thorne pushed gently. The door swung inward with a low creak that sounded like a scream in the morning silence. He froze, waited 30 seconds, listened for German reaction, nothing. Just distant artillery and the sound of his own breathing. He slipped inside, pulled the door closed behind him. Interior darkness was absolute. The air smelled like old grain and mildew and stone dust. Thorne stood motionless, letting his eyes adjust. Slowly, details emerged. Circular space, maybe 12 feet diameter, stone walls rising into blackness above. Ladder rungs visible as darker rectangles against the stone, iron bars set into mortar, climbing upward. He shifted the Winchester from his shoulder, slung it across his back with the muzzle pointing down. Checked his pack straps. Tightened the waist belt. 43 pounds needed to be secured before climbing 60 feet. He tested the first rung, pulled on it, felt it hold solid. The iron was cold, rough with rust. He gripped it, stepped up, found the second rung with his boot. The climb began. Each rung required testing before committing full weight. Some were solid. Some shifted slightly in their mortar beds. One rung, 15 feet up, pulled loose completely when he gripped it. The iron bar came free, clanged against the wall, fell to the floor below. Thorne hung from one hand, found the next rung, pulled himself up. His heart hammered. That clang had been loud. Any German within 200 yards would have heard it. He waited, hanging on the ladder, listening. 30 seconds, 60 seconds. No sounds, except distant gunfire. He kept climbing. The pack weight shifted with each movement. Winchester pressed against his spine. Canteens clinked softly despite cloth padding. His shoulders burned. His fingers ached, gripping cold iron. At 40 feet, his right hand slipped on a wet rung. He caught himself with his left, boots scraping stone, pack swinging. Steadied, breathed, continued. At 50 feet, gray dawn light filtered through the silo opening above. He could see the ladder rungs now, could see the circular opening, could see sky. At 58 feet, he reached the summit. Thorne pulled himself onto a circular catwalk that ringed the silo's interior edge. The catwalk was stone, 4 feet wide, with a 3-foot parapet wall providing cover. He crawled to the south side, the side facing the château, and looked over the parapet. 800 yards of Norman farmland spread below. The wheat field, pale green in early light. The hedgerows marking property boundaries. The road running east-west below the château. And the château itself. Stone walls gray in the morning shadows. German flag hanging limp in the still air. Range to château, 760 yards. Thorne used his binoculars to verify. Focused on the balcony, counted stone blocks in the wall, calculated. 760 yards, maybe 750. Close enough. The balcony was clearly visible. Second floor, south face of the building, iron railing, mostly intact. Table still there, where Germans had placed it for their conferences. Chairs around the table, everything visible. Thorne checked his watch. 0714 hours. The German morning conference started at 0700. He'd missed it by 14 minutes. Next opportunity, 1600 hours. Evening briefing, 8 hours to wait. He arranged his equipment carefully, set the canteens against the inner wall, stacked the K rations beside them, opened both ammunition boxes, counted rounds. 60 cartridges, laid them out in rows of 10, easy to reach. Folded the wool blanket, placed it on the parapet as a rifle rest. The Winchester came off his back. He worked the bolt, checked the chamber. Empty. Fed 5 rounds into the internal magazine. Worked the bolt again, chambered the first round. Safety on. The rifle weighed 9 pounds. Empty. 9 pounds, 8 ounces loaded. He rested it on the folded blanket, positioned the crosshairs on the château balcony. Through the 4-power scope, the balcony looked close. Clear image. He could see details on the iron table, could see the chair backs, could see the balcony door. Closed. Wind check. Thorne studied the wheat field, watched the stalks move. Light breeze from the west, maybe 3 miles per hour. Not the 5 he'd estimated last night. 3 miles per hour meant 8 inches of wind drift at 760 yards, not 14. He'd adjust. Elevation check. The silo height gave him approximately 15 degrees of downward angle. That reduced effective range slightly, maybe 20 yards. Call it 740 yards for calculation purposes. Bullet drop at 740 yards, 115 inches. He'd hold 9 feet high. Aim at the balcony wall above the target's head. Let the bullet arc down. At 0741 hours, Thorne ate a K-ration cracker, drank 4 ounces of water, settled in to wait. The sun climbed. The air warmed. By 0900 hours, the temperature was 65 degrees. By 1100 hours, 72 degrees. Heat rose from the stone, made the air shimmer. Thorne watched through the scope, saw mirage waves dancing above the wheat field. Mirage meant air currents, meant wind variations, meant harder shooting. At 1200 hours, he ate another K-ration. Beef hash, cold from the can, tasted like metal and salt. He chewed slowly, watching the château. No movement, no Germans visible. At 1400 hours, a German patrol emerged from the château. 6 soldiers, rifles slung, walking south along the road. Routine patrol. They disappeared into hedgerows 400 yards away. At 1500 hours, Thorne rechecked his rifle. Worked the bolt, verified the round, chambered correctly, looked through the scope, verified clarity, adjusted his position slightly, found a more comfortable rest for the rifle. At 1545 hours, he began watching intensely. 15 minutes until the scheduled conference. At 1555 hours, the balcony door opened. A German soldier emerged first, private, based on lack of insignia. Young, maybe 19. He looked around nervously, scanned the ground, returned inside, reconnaissance, checking for threats. 2 minutes later, the door opened again. A German officer stepped onto the balcony. Major, based on the shoulder insignia visible through Thorne's scope. Tall, maybe 6 feet. Thin build, dark hair. He carried a map case, set it on the table, opened it. Second officer appeared. Captain, shorter, heavier, blonde hair. He carried papers. Third officer, another captain. Medium height, dark uniform, binoculars around his neck. 3 targets. Thorne had to choose. He selected the major, senior officer, likely the commander. Kill the head, body follows. The major stood at the table, spreading maps. Thorne settled the crosshairs on him. Range 760 yards, wind 3 miles per hour from west. Thorne aimed 8 inches left of the major's chest. Elevation. He aimed at the stone wall 3 feet above the major's head. His breathing slowed. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. On the 4th exhale, he held his breath halfway out. Let his body settle. Let the crosshairs steady. The major pointed at something on the map, stood still for 3 seconds. Thorne squeezed the trigger. The Winchester recoiled, pushed back against his shoulder. The sound was enormous, echoed off stone, rolled across the fields. Through the scope, Thorne watched the bullet strike. The major's chest erupted red. The officer fell backward, hit the balcony floor, didn't move. The other 2 officers froze for exactly 1 second. Then they dove for the doorway, disappeared inside. The door slammed shut. First kill, confirmed. Time, 1600 hours, 11 seconds. Thorne worked the bolt. The spent casing ejected, brass glinting in afternoon sun. He caught it before it fell, dropped it in his canvas bag. No evidence left behind. He chambered the second round, settled back into position, watched the balcony. Nothing moved. The door stayed closed. No return fire. Germans didn't know where the shot originated. Thorne calculated the acoustics. Shot fired from northeast at 45-degree angle to the château. Sound would echo off the stone walls, off the ground, off the surrounding buildings. From inside the château, Germans would hear echoes from multiple directions. They'd think the shot came from the south, from American lines, not from the northeast silo. Advantage? Thorne. He settled in to wait for the next target. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 15. The balcony door remained closed. No Germans visible. Thorne expected this. First reaction to sniper fire. Take cover, stay hidden, figure out what happened. At 16:45 hours, the door cracked open, 6 inches, someone looking out. Thorne watched through the scope, couldn't see who. The door closed again. At 1700 hours, nothing. At 1800 hours, nothing. Germans had abandoned the balcony for today. Thorne ate another K ration as the sun set. Beef stew, cold, drank half a canteen, checked his ammunition count. 59 rounds remaining. 1 fired, 1 kill. He wrapped himself in the wool blanket as darkness fell. Temperature dropped to 58 degrees. The stone catwalk was cold, hard. He dozed sitting up, back against the parapet, rifle across his lap. Woke every 30 minutes, checked the château, nothing visible in darkness. June 10th, 0600 hours. Dawn. Thorne was watching the balcony when the door opened at 06:45 hours. Earlier than yesterday. Germans adjusting their schedule. A single German soldier emerged. Private. Looked around carefully, scanned the ground with binoculars. Thorne stayed motionless. From 760 yards, a man in field gray uniform was nearly invisible against stone background. The private lowered his binoculars, waved someone forward. An officer appeared. Lieutenant, young, maybe 22. He moved quickly, stayed close to the wall, glanced at papers on the table. Didn't linger. Started to turn back toward the door. Range, 760 yards. Wind, calm morning air, 2 miles per hour. Thorne aimed 5 inches left, 9 feet high. Shot. The lieutenant dropped. Not a chest hit. The bullet struck high, caught him in the head. Unintentional, but effective. The lieutenant collapsed, dead before hitting stone. Germans inside pulled the body through the doorway. Door slammed. Second kill. Confirmed. Time, 06:51 hours. Thorne chambered another round, caught the brass, bagged it. 58 rounds remaining. 2 fired, 2 kills. The Germans were learning. Balcony was lethal. But they needed the balcony. Only position with clear view of American lines. Without it, they were commanding blind. At 0700 hours, the scheduled conference time, the door stayed shut. No Germans appeared. At 1600 hours, Germans tried a different approach. Sent an enlisted man onto the balcony first. Private, nervous, moving fast, grabbed papers from the table, ran back inside. Survived. 30 seconds later, a captain emerged. Confident, aggressive. Thought he was safe because the private survived. Fatal assumption. Thorne's shot caught him center mass. The captain fell, didn't move. Third kill. Confirmed. Time, 1600 hours, 43 seconds, 57 rounds remaining. 3 fired, 3 kills. Pattern emerging. Germans needed the balcony for command functions, but every use of the balcony meant death. They were trapped. Stop using balcony meant degraded command and control. Keep using balcony meant dead officers. June 11th. Germans changed tactics. Morning conference moved to 0530 hours. Pre-dawn darkness. Thorne couldn't see targets in darkness at 760 yards. No shot possible. Germans finished their conference before sunrise. Smart. But evening conference remained 1600 hours. Full daylight. No choice. Operations required evening briefing for patrol coordination. At 1600 hours, 4 German officers stepped onto the balcony simultaneously. New tactic. Theory. Sniper can't kill all 4 before others take cover. Multiple targets force the sniper to choose. Survivors escape. Thorne tracked the fastest moving officer. Major, moving toward the table. Shot. The major dropped. Other 3 officers dove through the doorway. 4th kill. Confirmed. 56 rounds remaining. 4 fired, 4 kills. June 12th. Germans generated smoke. At 1545 hours, white smoke billowed around the château. Thick clouds obscured the balcony completely. At 1600 hours, officers used the balcony under smoke cover. Smart tactic. Except wind was wrong. West wind pushed smoke east, created gaps. Thorne watched through the scope. Smoke swirled, cleared momentarily. 1 officer visible for 3 seconds. Shot. Officer down. 5th kill. Confirmed. 55 rounds remaining. 5 fired, 5 kills. June 13th. Germans tried speed. Single officer sprinted onto the balcony at 1600 hours. Grabbed 1 document from the table, sprinted back. Total exposure, 4 seconds. Thorne didn't shoot. Target moving too fast. Probability of hit too low. He wouldn't waste ammunition on low percentage shots. The officer survived. But Germans learned. Speed worked for document retrieval. Didn't work for actual conferences. Can't coordinate operations in 4-second sprints. Need 10 minutes minimum for effective briefing. Can't have 10 minutes on that balcony without dying. By June 13th evening, German behavior changed. Radio intercepts from American intelligence reported German 7th Army requesting officer replacements for Château command post. Reason? Unacceptable casualties from unknown sniper. German estimate of sniper position. South of Château in American lines. They hadn't identified the silo. June 14th. No officers appeared on balcony entire day. Morning conference canceled. Evening conference canceled. Germans operating without visual reconnaissance of American positions. Effect on German operations, immediate and measurable. American intelligence noted patrol activity decreased 60%. Counterattacks less frequent, less coordinated. German pressure across the sector declined. 1 sniper in a silo, 5 confirmed kills, had paralyzed German command effectiveness. Battalion intelligence officer, Captain Morrison, reported the pattern to Colonel Hastings. Sir, German officer casualties at the Château have stopped their operations cold. 5 confirmed kills in 5 days. Nobody knows where the sniper is, but whoever he is, he's more effective than a full company assault. Hastings studied the intelligence map. We haven't sent a sniper team to that sector. No, sir. This appears to be unauthorized initiative. Find out who it is. I want to know. Meanwhile, in the silo, Thorne was running calculations. 4K rations remaining. 1 full canteen plus half another. Ammunition, 55 rounds. Day 6 of operation. He could last 2 more days on current supplies. Maybe 3 if he rationed carefully. But mission effectiveness was declining. Germans had adapted. Balcony use dropped to near 0. Time to consider extraction. Problem. Crossing 200 yards of open ground in daylight meant certain death. Had to wait for darkness. 4 more hours until full darkness at 2100 hours. He ate a K ration, drank 4 ounces of water, watched the Château. At 1800 hours, Germans tried one final tactic. 3 French civilians appeared on the balcony. Women, elderly, terrified, hands raised. Germans behind them, using them as human shields while officers worked at the table behind civilian cover. Thorne watched through the scope, saw the civilians' faces, saw their fear, saw German officers behind them, calculating, using innocence as armor. Rules of engagement. Cannot fire with civilians in line of fire. He didn't shoot, waited 40 minutes while Germans completed their work. Civilians were dismissed, sent back inside. But Thorne had memorized the German officers' faces through the scope. 2 captains, 1 major. If he saw them again without civilians, they were dead. But for now, he waited. At 2100 hours on June 15th, full darkness settled over Normandy. Thorne had been in the silo for 6 days and 17 hours. His uniform stank of sweat and stone dust. His face was rough with 6 days of beard growth. His water situation was critical. 4 ounces remaining in the last canteen. 2K rations left, 55 rounds of ammunition. The tactical situation had changed. Germans no longer used the balcony regularly. When they did use it, they employed human shields or moved too fast for effective engagement. Mission effectiveness had dropped below acceptable threshold. Time to extract. He packed his gear methodically, rolled the wool blanket, secured it to his pack, collected all 60 brass casings from his canvas bag, distributed them in his pockets. No evidence left behind. Stowed the K rations, secured the canteens. The Winchester went across his back, muzzle down, chamber empty. Magazine loaded with 5 rounds. Total weight, 38 pounds. Lighter than the approach. Water consumed, rations eaten, ammunition expended. Thorne took one final look at the chateau through the darkness. No lights visible. Blackout discipline. Just a dark mass against darker sky. 5 German officers dead in that building. Maybe more wounded. Definitely disrupted. The mission had worked. Not perfectly, but well enough. He began descent at 21:15 hours. The ladder was more dangerous in darkness. Couldn't see the rungs clearly. Had to feel for each one with his boots, test it, commit weight. The pack shifted with every movement. Winchester pressed against his spine. His shoulders ached from 6 days of confined positions. At 40 feet, his right boot slipped on a wet rung. He caught himself with both hands, pack swinging, boots scraping stone. Held on, found the rung again, continued down. At 20 feet, he heard voices, German voices. Close, maybe 100 yards north. Thorne froze on the ladder, listened. 2 men, speaking German, casual conversation, not alert tones, routine patrol. They were moving south along the hedgerow, would pass within 50 yards of the silo. He waited, hanging on the ladder, arms burning. Can't move, can't make noise. Germans had to pass before he could continue. The voices grew louder. 40 yards, 30 yards. Close enough to hear individual words. Thorne didn't speak German, but he recognized the tone. Bored soldiers on routine duty, complaining about something. Food, probably. Soldiers always complained about food. The voices reached their closest point, 20 yards from the silo. Then they continued south, fading. Thorne waited until he couldn't hear them. Another 2 minutes for safety. Then resumed descent. He reached ground level at 21:32 hours. Checked his compass. Southwest, heading back to American lines. 180 yards across open ground. He exited the silo, closed the door quietly, dropped prone in the wheat. Began crawling. Same technique as the approach. Low crawl, 3 feet per minute. Slow, methodical, silent. At 50 yards, artillery opened up 15 miles south. Big guns, 155 millimeter, based on the sound. Sustained barrage. Germans would be looking south toward the fire, not north toward their own rear areas. Good timing. Thorne synchronized his movement with the artillery impacts. Crawled during the noise, froze during the silence between salvos. Used the sound to mask any noise he made. At 100 yards, he heard a vehicle. German truck moving east along the road. Engine noise faded. He continued crawling. At 150 yards, his right knee hit something solid. German mine, anti-personnel type, based on the size. He'd crawled into a minefield. His knee rested on the pressure plate. Any additional weight would detonate it. Thorne froze completely. Didn't breathe. The mine was designed to detonate with 7 pounds of pressure. His knee was applying maybe 4 pounds. Moving meant shifting weight. Shifting weight meant detonation. Detonation meant death. He assessed options. Back up slowly, distribute weight, remove knee without triggering mechanism, risk. Movement might add pressure before reducing it. Alternative, stay frozen, wait for dawn, try to see the mine and disarm it. Risk, Germans would spot him at dawn. Third option, very slowly shift weight to his hands and other knee. Lift the loaded knee clear. Risk, temporary weight increase during the shift. He chose option 3, began shifting weight incrementally. Ounces at a time, pressed down with his left hand, pressed down with his left knee, reduced pressure on right knee by fraction, waited. Nothing, continued shifting. More weight to hands, more weight to left knee. Right knee pressure decreasing. Took 4 minutes. 4 minutes of controlled movement, spreading weight, reducing pressure on that mine. Finally, his right knee lifted clear. The mine didn't detonate. He crawled east 20 yards, cleared the minefield, resumed southwest heading. His hands were shaking. First time in 6 days his hands had shaken. At 180 yards, he reached American lines. A voice challenged from darkness. Halt! Password! Kansas. Thorne kept his voice low. Advance and be recognized. Thorne stood, walked forward. A private from 3rd Platoon, kid from New Jersey, maybe 19 years old. The private's eyes went wide. Jesus Christ, Sarge, where the hell you been? Lieutenant Davis said you were on patrol. But that was 6 days ago. Everyone thought you were dead. Not dead. Working. Where's Lieutenant Davis? Command post, 200 yards south. Thorne walked through American positions. Soldiers stared at him. Ghost returning from the dead. His uniform was filthy. His face was gaunt. He looked like he'd been buried and dug up. He found Davis in the farmhouse at 00:45 hours. The lieutenant was asleep on a pile of rubble. Thorne shook his shoulder. Davis woke instantly, grabbed for his pistol, saw Thorne, stopped. Sergeant Thorne, you're alive. Yes, sir. Where have you been? The silo. Like I said. Davis sat up. 6 days? You've been in that silo for 6 days? 6 days, 17 hours. Jesus. Did it work? Did you get any of them? 5 confirmed kills, all officers. Germans stopped using the balcony after day 4. Mission effectiveness declined. Extracted tonight. Davis stood, grabbed his map. 5 kills. Can you confirm that? I watched them fall. Watched Germans carry them inside. 5 officers, 3 majors, 2 captains. Battalion's going to want verification. Send a patrol at dawn. Check behind the château. Germans bury their dead quickly. Look for fresh graves. Davis studied him. You look like hell, Sergeant. Need water, need food, need sleep. Get all 3. I'll report to battalion in the morning. This is going to go up the chain. Way up. Thorne drank a full canteen. Ate 2K rations someone gave him. Found a corner of the farmhouse, laid down on bare floor, slept for 11 hours. He woke at 1300 hours, June 16th, to find Captain Morrison standing over him. Battalion Intelligence Officer. Sergeant Thorne, on your feet. Colonel wants to see you. Thorne stood, followed Morrison to battalion headquarters. A farmhouse 300 yards south, less damaged than most. Inside, Colonel Hastings waited with his staff. Hastings was 42 years old, West Point class of 1924, professional soldier. He looked tired. Everyone looked tired. 6 days since D-Day. 6 days of continuous combat. Sergeant Thorne reporting, sir. Hastings looked him over. You smell like you've been living in a hole. Stone silo, sir. Similar conditions. Lieutenant Davis says you operated behind enemy lines for 6 days. Shot 5 German officers, used unauthorized equipment, disobeyed orders to wait for artillery support. That's accurate, sir. Captain Morrison sent a patrol to verify. They found 6 fresh graves behind the château. Grave markers indicate officers. 3 majors, 2 captains, 1 lieutenant. Dates match your timeline. 6, sir? I only confirmed 5. Patrol found 6 graves. Maybe you wounded one who died later. Maybe you miscounted. Either way, it's 6 dead German officers. Morrison stepped forward. Sir, if I may. The tactical impact goes beyond 6 casualties. German operations in this sector have degraded significantly. Patrol activity down 60%. Counterattacks down 75%. German radio traffic indicates command paralysis. They can't coordinate effectively without visual reconnaissance from that balcony.